This is the last module or last lesson of Module 1, which is Integer Concepts. This is Lesson 3, Find and Apply Absolute Value. And our vocab word is going to be absolute value because that's what this lesson is going to be about. Absolute value is a number. A number is the distance from the number to 0 on a number line shown by these lines on each side. This is going to make a lot more sense when I actually start going over with you. We're going to start over here with this fishing question. The elevation of 4 fish in a lake are shown. So we have our 4 fish here. We got -1, -3, -6, and -10. The lifeguard stand, the elevation at the top is 6 feet. We're going to graph the integers on the number line. So we're going to start. I have 6. I'm going to write it down. -1, -3, -6, and -10. And I'm not going to write that one. Next question. What is the distance from 0 to each elevation on the number line? So right here, -1 is in between these two little lines. Those little lines are called absolute value. And absolute value is the distance that the number in between is away from 0. It is always going to be positive. So -1 is 1 spot away from 0. The absolute value of 6. 6 is 6 spots away from 0. The absolute value of -3 is 3 because -3 is 3 spots away from 0. The absolute value of -10 is 10 because -10 is 10 spots away from 0. And the absolute value of -6 is 6 because -6 is 6 spots away from 0. Absolute values will always be positive. Let's look down at the next one. The distance from a number to 0 on the number line is called the absolute value of the number. Complete each of the following sentences using the number line above. So that's the number line up by the fishing. The absolute value of -1 is 1. The absolute value of 6 is 6. The absolute value of -3 is 3. The absolute value of -10 is 10. And the absolute value of -6 is 6. Negative numbers are less than positive numbers, which you guys knew that. Does this mean that the absolute value of a negative number must be less than the absolute value of a positive number? No. Because I want to give you an example here. Let's look at +3 and -3. So if I look at the absolute values of those are the same because they're both 3 spots away from 0, but just on opposite sides. I could have a -6 and a +2. If I find the absolute value of those, the -1 is actually more because the -1 is 6 spots away from 0, whereas 2 is only 2 spots away from 0. Let's look down here at the insects. And we're going to take the stuff from the insects and we're going to answer these questions. Before we start that, I want to talk up here about the magnitude. The magnitude of a number is its size or amount without considering its sign. The magnitude of a number is the same as its absolute value. So if the magnitude was -2, the absolute value of that is 2, so the magnitude is also 2. Let's look here at this lovely question about all these large named insects. Some insects produce a chemical that prevents the water in their bodies from freezing and helps them survive extreme cold. An insect's supercooling point is the lowest temperature at which it can survive. The table shows the supercooling points of several insects. So we have them all right here. I do want to point out that these are in Celsius, not Fahrenheit. So we're going to use this information to answer this over here. So let's look at A. We're going to graph them. My first one is -54. And if you notice something here, we're counting by tens, so it's not going to be on the exact point. I know this is -50 right here, so -54 would be about right there. And I got that one done. -35. Here's -30, so we're right here between those two. -9. We have -10 here, so -9 would be about right there. Again, it doesn't have to be exact, just in the general area. -6.8. That would be around right here, depending on how big you write your 9. And then negative 70. That one's easier because it's right here on the line. So I have all of those on there. Now I'm going to answer these questions. What are the magnitudes of negative 70, negative 54, and negative 35? Remember, magnitude is just another way to talk about absolute values. So our magnitudes of negative 70, the same as 70, 54, and 35. It's the distance that number is away from 0 on the number line. They will always be positive. C. Complete these number sentences, which use absolute value symbols to show the magnitude of each number from part B. So the absolute value of negative 70 is 70, because negative 70 is 70 spots away from 0. The absolute value of negative 54 is 54, because negative 54 is 54 spots away from 0. And then the absolute value of negative 35 is 35, because negative 35 is 35 spots away from 0. Let's look down here on D. Write an inequality to show the relationship between negative 70 and negative 35. That means we're either going to use a less than sign or a greater than sign between them. If you look at the number line, that will help you out. So we're looking at negative 70 and negative 35. Here's negative 70, here's negative 35. You'll notice negative 70 is farther to the left. Numbers farther on the left are smaller. So negative 70 is less than negative 35. And then which supercooling point is closer to 0 on the number line? If you look on the number line, 0 is right here. The closest is negative 6.8. Check understanding. Only 2 questions today. I want you to make sure you're trying it before you watch the video to see if you know what you're doing. When you think you've gotten as much as you can, I want you to start the video and check your answers. If you got it wrong or if you left it blank because you didn't remember exactly how to do it, make sure you're writing that in and correcting things. So, check understanding. A withdrawal, or money removed from a bank account, is listed on a bank statement as the negative number, which represents a greater withdrawal. If I got $45 taken out or $50 taken out, it would be negative $50. Negative 50 is a greater withdrawal because I'm taking more money out. What does the absolute value of negative 2 represent? So the absolute value of negative 2 equals 2. Okay, what do you remember on this section? You're going to see what you remember how to do, and then you're going to play the video to see how you did. So let's look at this first one. A model for a distance traveled from a cabin in a state park represents distances south of the cabin in negative numbers. So everything down here are negative, and north would be positive numbers. The number line shows the location of 2 hikers who walk farther. So Andy walked to here, which Andy's at 8. So Andy walked 8. Maurice, if we're counting, 2, 4, 6, he walked 6. So he's at negative 6. So who walked farther? Andy walked farther because the absolute value of 8 is 8. The absolute value of negative 6 is 6. So Andy walked 8 miles, whereas Maurice only walked 6 miles. And just because he's going south and they're listed as negative, they still count that you're walking. How many miles is Maurice from the cabin? Which we kind of already answered. He's 6 miles. And this next one. The average low surface temperature for Mars is negative 80. The average low surface temperature for Jupiter is negative 234. Which temperature has a greater absolute value? So the absolute value of negative 80 would be 80 because negative 80 is 80 spots from 0. And the absolute value of 234, negative 234, is 234. Which temperature has the greater absolute value? It would be negative 234 degrees Fahrenheit. And the last one, which is probably something you went super quick because there's no words for you to read. It's straightforward. The absolute value of 9 is 9. The absolute value of negative 1 is 1. The absolute value of negative 56 is 56. And the absolute value of 0 is 0. And that is all there is for this module.